the atoms are treating using the potential function, and which is derived from the classical mechanics. Newtonian mechanics we are using here to for the potential energy function. Then the empirically derived potential functions and the parameters are used for the evaluation of the interactions, and that is known as force field. Okay, so MM is very, very fast. Since we are not dealing with the electrons here, we are dealing with only the atoms. This is very fast, and it can be applicable to a large number of atoms. That means macromolecular system you can use here. Now, computer simulation is a very, very important tool. It is computer simulation. Basically, it is not an theory on it. It is not a theory. It is not a theory, not an experiment. But it is basically bridging the theory and the experiment, and that is the reason that computer simulation is sometimes known as a simulation experiment. Okay, rather than or computer experiment, computational experiment. Okay, so this is not a theory, not an experiment, but the bridging between the theory and the experiment. So what we can do here, that if you know the molecular, whatever the potentials of the molecule, if you know the intermolecular potential forms, you can easily get the different type of properties like the phases. You can know the structural property, you can know the dynamical property, and so on. Okay? So that's why from the simulation we can know all these type of properties of the system. Now here the same thing. This I have shown, whatever I have shown here already. I have described that how your model is relating the theory and the experiment. So this is the same thing I have shown. Only just except model, the simulation has been incorporated here. So this is your make a model. So get the experimental result, test your model, get the simulation result, and then test the theoretical prediction. Okay, so this is how the complex fluid for the real system and complex fluid for the model system work. Okay, real system means this is basically you can think about the experimental kind of things, and model means this is a model dependent one. Okay, so this is the same whatever I had shown in one of my previous slide where it was more elaborately mentioned. Okay, so that this is only the incorporation of the computer simulation, nothing else. Now here I have shown the history of computational simulation. You can see that in Newtonian simulation, which was a classical equation of motion, these are the theoretical milestones. Then the Boltzmann classical foundation of classical mechanics, what we obviously used in our study, and then the Schrödinger quantum mechanics of motion, that is also there. Then using all these three theories are basically the backbone of the computational sciences. And then these are the molecular mechanics milestones, since I'm going to deal with the molecular mechanics as my system is very large. Okay, so the first Metropolis was the first in 1953 who did the first molecular simulation of a liquid considering the Hertz sphere. Okay, and then Lennard-Jones potential was used to perform the IMSA simulation by Wood in this. And then the first MD simulation, first MD. Now you see, earlier it was MC, now it has converted to MD now. MD was done in by Alder in 1957. Same, it was a simulation of liquid Hertz sphere model they have considered. Then in 1964, Rahman, he used Lennard-Jones. First Lennard-Jones potential was used in the MD simulation by Rahman. And then the first MD simulation of protein. Okay, it was done by Martin Karplus and McCammon, and already I mentioned Karplus got a Nobel Prize in 2013 also for this work. And then Karplus, he developed some force field, general force field, which is very, very essential for the MD program. As I already mentioned, that what is force field, that is a potential form already, that is mentioned. And then Peter Coleman, he also developed another force field which is known as Amber. This is also very important for the protein dynamics. Then Carl Parnillo, he did the first full QM simulation on proteins, okay, in 1985. And then Peter Coleman, he did first hybrid QMMM simulation of the proteins, okay. So these are the very, very important study which reaches the field. Okay, now from molecular dynamic simulation, what we can do? So this is basically a technique. We know that this compute the equilibrium and transfer properties of classical many-body system. Okay, so classical many-body system. What I mentioned there. Here we are going to talk about the dealing with the atoms. Atoms are interacting with each other due to the forces. Okay, which act upon every atom. And then when the atoms are moving, there is a change in the instantaneous forces, and as the atom move, their relative positions also changing, and forces also changing as well. Okay, and then as I mentioned already, these are mentioned by me, that simulation time range we can go up to many of the nanoseconds, and we can go for the several bigger systems having lot of number of atoms. Okay, which phenomenon can be handled? We can see the protein stability, conformational change, protein folding, unfolding, biomolecular association, molecular recognition, membrane micelle formation, ion transport phenomena within the membrane, then role of solvent in biological phenomena, drug design. Other than that, hybrid QMMM, we can go for the chemical reaction, enzyme catalysis, photochemical reaction, electron transport, and so forth. Okay, so that is all we can do by performing the simulation, molecular dynamic simulation. Now, what we need for the MD? So we need to know for each atom in every molecule, we need to know the position, we need to know the momentum, we need to know the charge and the information, force field information. That means the bonded information, which bond, which angle, with the torsion, what are the other non-bonded interaction, and so on. Okay. So there is a need of force field. So I will just give a very brief description of the force field. So this is the energy of chemical structure. It is combination with the statistical mechanics. A force field is nothing but a simple mathematical function to treat energy structure relationship. Here you can see the total energy of the system can be described by intermolecular and intramolecular interactions. So intramolecular interaction that involve energy stretch, energy bend, and torsion, and intermolecular interaction involve non-bonded interaction. Okay, so these three are basically intra, and this is inter. So here the energy which is associated with the bond stretching, this is the energy associated with the angle bending, and this is the energy associated with the change of the torsion angle, that means the dihedral angle. Okay, so intermolecular potential, this is the form of the as I told, that stretch, bend, and torsion, these are the intramolecular interaction potential. So the potential form is E equal to K into R minus R naught square, where R naught is the equilibrium bond length, R is the instantaneous bond length, and KB is the force constant related to the bond stretch. Okay, so here we are just using the simple harmonic oscillator model, which is the very simplest model. Obviously nowadays the people, when are developing force field, they are using anharmonicity, they are introducing anharmonicity in their model, which is but I'm not going to discuss that because that is beyond the scope of this lecture. So I will be confined to myself within the additive force field, which is basically based on this harmonic potential. Okay, so this is the intermolecular, and you can see if with the change of the length, how the energy is going to change. This we have taken only for the carbon-carbon bond length, and you can see here this is the zero potential energy. Okay, so this where it is, this is when the bond length is equilibrium bond length is reached. Okay, so this is the bond stretch, and next this is the angle bend. This is also very similar to the bond stretch expression. Here the angle is going to change, and this is the equilibrium bond angle. This is equilibrium angle, yes, and this is the instantaneous angle, and this is the corresponding force constant. And here I have represented the nature is, since it is a simple harmonic oscillator model, you can expect the result will be like this only. And then the dihedral torsion angle expression for the torsion potential. So here you can see this is a cosine function. So since it is a cosine function, obviously we should not expect the result will be like this. There will be certain, it should be periodic in nature, where delta is the phase and n is the periodicity, phi is the torsion angle as it is displayed here. It involves the 4 atoms here, and the k phi is the related dihedral force constant. Okay, so now this one, as we know that this is the torsion, you can see here C, this 4C when the plane is bending, so that is the torsion angle. And here this is the nature of the torsion potential with the change of the degree. When this, here we have considered this and this torsion angle we have considered, and how it is going to change, the potential is going to change as a periodic manner. It is displayed here. And then next is another term is there that is not shown there in the main potential expression, but that is the improper potential energy. Improper potential energy is also, it is involved 4 atoms. You can see here this carbon, oxygen, and this oxygen. This is basically used to keep intact the planarity. Suppose you have the sp2 and sp3 hybridized atom in the same structure. Here you can see C double bond O. Okay, so to make the C double bond O in planar, we have to get some extra potential here that is known as improper. Okay, potential and improper potential energy, where phi naught is equilibrium improper angle, and this is the instantaneous improper angle, and this is the corresponding force constant. So again, this will be similar to the simple harmonic oscillator model. This is the function, how the energy function is changing with psi. Other than intramolecular potential, as I told, there is intramolecular potential also. So this is the intermolecular potential. Intermolecular potential is nothing but the van der Waals interaction. So our very famous Lennard-Jones interaction. So where sigma is the collision parameter, psi, epsilon is the well depth, and Rm is the distance at the minima. Okay, so here you can see this is the r to the power minus 12 term and r to the power minus 6. Two terms are there. So r to the power minus 12. This is basically the repulsive term, and r to the power minus 6. This is the attractive term. Okay, so Pauli's repulsive exclusion is incorporated here, and if you see the potential with the change of the distance, you can see here. So this is the nature, this is the repulsive part, and this is the attractive part. When both of these are combined, it is giving you the Lennard-Jones or van der Waals interaction. This is the blue one. Okay, and here well depth means this is the difference when it is deviated from the zero potential energy. So this is where you have the R mean value. Here when your minimum distance is this one, and that time whatever the potential, and that potential with the zero, that is the well depth. Okay, that is known as epsilon, and sigma is this is the sigma. Okay, the collision parameter. Okay, and other than van der Waals interaction, we have the electrostatic interaction, which is fully based on the Coulomb interaction part, which is defined by this expression. So these are all the potential energy formed, which is giving which together giving you the force field. Okay, so there are several force field for the bimolecular assimilation. So I'm just showing you a few of those. Those are very, very popular. One is amber, another is charm, another is bromos, another is OPLS. So all these force fields, these are charm is force field part. They have actually two parts for all these systems. So all these force fields, they have two different parts. One is for the simulation, and another is for the force field. Sometimes force field is free of cost, but the simulation package you have to buy it. Okay, so but mostly this charm, this is full this is free, the force field is free. Then bromos for force field and simulation package, both are free, and OPLS also, it's a kind of free, but amber simulation package as well as charm also simulation package one has to purchase. Okay, so these are the popular force field. If somebody is interested to do protein simulation, they can go through it. So the details are given here, but I'm not going to discuss it. Now there are some technical aspects of the simulation. So first off is that very, very crucial is the boundary. So what should be the boundary for our simulated system? Okay, so at first we are defining the simulation cell. Now the simulation cell, some problem is there that suppose this is my simulation box length. Now my atoms are moving here inside. Okay, so these are my atoms here. So now what happens that some atoms, it is reaching, it is just stuck in here the surface. Okay, when it is stucking at the surface, what it will feel some unbalanced backward force. Why it will feel some unbalanced backward force? Because we do not have any atoms here. Okay, if I'm just considering my simulation box, so there will be surface effect. Some surface effect will be there, and that is the reason always we are asked to take the simulation box little larger, and also we have to use some techniques so that the surface effect can be minimized. Okay, so how to minimize the surface effect is that we have to replicate the central simulation box in the space. Okay, just like this. Here in this picture you can see that this is my simulation box. This is this red one. Okay, so this is my main simulation box, and we have made replicate the simulation box over on the space. Okay, so this is the center one. Now A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all these are replicated one. So what will happen now when your atom is near to the surface? So it won't feel that there is no other atoms present here. Okay, because why? Now my technique, simulation technique, we are imposing some other arbitrary boxes beside my main simulation box, so my atoms will never fill. So some way we are now diminishing the surface effect. Okay, So that is the reason with the solution of the problem, we have to use the periodic boundary condition. So this is replication of the simulation, central simulation box to the 3 dimension is known as periodic boundary condition. So we have to employ the periodic boundary condition to get escape from the surface phenomena, okay, surface problem. Now, if I am just replicating my central box to so many boxes, so my simulation, what it will do when it will calculate the interactions, so there will be an interaction between its images also, because in the next box there is no real particle but the image of it, okay. So also in periodic boundary condition, I must say when this atom, suppose this atom, it is going beyond my simulation box, what it will do, that from the other end the image of the particle will be entering, okay. So what will happen, my central box always it will have the same number of atoms, there won't be any loss, okay. Now since I have a lot of images is surrounding my main central box, so if I now calculate the interaction with all my images, the calculation will be very, very vast and it will be very difficult to carry on, okay. So we have to use minimum image criteria, so that among all possible images of particle J, select only the closest one and then take the interaction, okay. Otherwise there will be, you see, for this particular atom, how many are there? These are there, this is so many are there, okay. So it is very difficult. So what I have to do, I have to choose the closest one, closest jth particle, and then we have to calculate the interaction between that to minimize the problem. Next is the non-bonded cutoff. That is very important here. So suppose I have a alkane like this, CH3 CH2 whole to the power n, then something, okay. So now this n, this number of n this basically determines then how many atoms will be there in your system. So you can see here, if you have n equal to 10, the number of atoms 32, okay, number of atoms 32. Now if I think within this particular molecule, if we have 32 number of atoms, then how many bond stretching informations will be there? We will find that 31 bond stretching information is there. So just like a water molecule, H2O, okay, H2O, 2 hydrogen and so here what we have, 2 bond HO, 2 bond information, 3 atoms but 2 bond information. So just like 32 atoms, when you have -1, that is the number of 31 number will be there for the bond stretch. Similarly, for the bending, you will find that 30 will be there for the bend for this particular this type of alkane I'm talking about. Then how many torsion terms will be there? There will be 81 torsion terms will be there, and the van der Waals, you will find that 405 van der Waals terms will be there. So that means van der Waals means those are intermolecular interaction. So there will be whatever the number of atoms are there, all can 1 1 1 2 1 3 2 1 2 2 2 3, all these kind of interactions will be there. So the number of van der Waals interactions are more, okay. So what I wanted to say now, that once you increase the number of n, you can see starting from the bonding stretch to van der Waals, you can see how the number is changing, okay. Here you see 70% only out of the total, only the 70% in the van der Waals interaction. Here you can see when the number is increasing to 100, the 96% of all the bonded information, 96 is for the van der Waals interaction, okay. Only 2% for the torsion, 1% bending and 1% stretching, okay. So that means van der Waals is playing an important role, which is non-bonded interaction, okay. So we have to take care of this. So how to take care of this? So, but one thing is there here, that if although my contribution of van der Waals interaction is very, very more when my number of atoms are more, but if I, from the central atom, if I change the distance, what it will happen, suppose my central atom is here and this is my distance, my simulation box is like this, bigger, okay. So now here one atom is there, here one atom, for the van der Waals interaction I'm talking about. So I'm changing the distance from the central atom. So it has been seen that then when the distance is 5 angstrom, this is the van der Waals energy, okay. So this is the van der Waals interaction energy. When it is 10, this is the change. When it is 15, this is the energy. When it is 100 angstrom distance, you will see that the energy change is very, very small. That means if you see this part, the energy change is happening in 10 to the power -5 order. That is, the change is very, very small when the distance is very high. What does it mean? It means that we can put some cutoff radius and then we can modify our calculation. We can speed up our calculation by putting some non-bonded cutoff distance, which is nothing but RC. It can be regarded as RC. Okay, so how to do that? The better method is to use a switching function. Okay, so we other than the cutoffs, so we can put the cutoff, that is RC, some parameter we have to put, which will determine, okay, not up to 100 but only up to 5 angstrom I'm going to calculate the non-bonded forces. Okay, so that is the cutoff up to which I'm going to calculate the non-bonded forces. But one problem is there, that when I am going to just put some cutoff, my energy of the system is going to change suddenly. So there will be an abrupt change in the energy. So how to control that over the change, certain change in energy, that so for that, what we have to do, that I mean, it will be abruptly change. Okay, so abrupt change in energy, we can use some switching function. Okay, which will smoothly change our energy to the potential energy, I mean zero expected energy. Okay, so next slide I have shown here. So some of the switching functions are there. So for here we have, you can see this is the total energy. This is shown in black in color. So if you are not using any switching function, how your energy is converging, you can see that a long distance it will be converging to the zero. Okay, energy will be converging to the zero. Just this is remember that this is the van der Waals interaction energy I'm talking about. Non-bonded interaction energy, already I had shown the Lennard-Jones potential graph for it, and you must understand this should be the nature of the curve. Okay, so this is the total energy curve, and now when I am putting some truncation, suddenly some cutoff I am putting, so what will happen, this energy is going like this it is going, then suddenly whenever the cutoff distance is there, suppose 12 is my cutoff distance, suddenly it will go to the zero here. Okay, so this is not healthy for the simulation. Okay, so what we have to do, not only the cutoff, we have to use some switching function, as I told. So that can be another two methods can be implemented. One is a switch cutoff, another is switch cutoff. Okay, so if you are using shift cutoff, what will happen, this green curve you can see here, it is going smoothly to get the zero energy, but problem is there, the minima is going to change. Your minima has shifted little bit left. Okay, you can see this is the actual minima and this is the minima here now. Okay, so there is the energy also, it is going to change. Okay, so from actual the energy is going to change when you are using the shift cutoff. Okay, now if you are using switch cutoff, what is happening, this is the blue curve, you can see up to here in switch cutoff you have to give two cutoff. One is the minimum cutoff, another is the maximum cutoff. So what it will do, this function, this will from the minimum cutoff, suppose it is a 10 angstrom, it will slowly change the energy towards the zero till the maximum cutoff. Okay, so at least the energy, whatever it is going to change, that is happening in a smoothly rather than when you are using only truncation. Okay, so that is the difference when you are using the cutoff, shift cutoff or some switch cutoff rather than the actual truncation. Okay, so now in the simulation you have to basically select some of the option, and when you are selecting option you have to keep it in mind that how my system's energy is going to change with the methods. So choosing method is very, very important. You have to go through you have to at least read the manuals that which method will be appropriate for my system. Otherwise, what will happen? Simulation will be running, you will be getting result, but that result may not be matching with your experimental or your expectation. Okay, due to some small error in our choosing of the method. That is the reason we have to choose the method very, very carefully. Okay. So now, other than this, another very important thing we have to handle, that is the long range forces. So long range forces is also very much crucial. So for the ions, individual particles which are neutralized, but polarized, dipole-dipole interaction is there. For those cases, we should not put any cutoff distance. Okay, because here each particles will interact with all the images and whichever is near to the empty boxes. And also sometimes we have to, for that we have to use another algorithm which is known as Ewell summation method. Okay, particle mesh Ewell summation method we have to use to control the long range interaction forces. So these are the very important and crucial things what I have mentioned, that when you are doing some simulation, you have to be very, very careful for choosing the methods. Now this slide shows the integration method. This is what we do in the MD algorithm: calculate the forces, update your position at a particular time, and then again calculate the forces, again change the time. So there are what are the integration methods available, that Verlet, velocity Verlet, predictor corrector, all these methods are available. I'm not going to the details of it, obviously those will take a lot of time, and mostly we generally use Verlet algorithm for our generation of the trajectory. Okay, so trajectory means the position of the system with respect to time. Now this is our MD flowchart. So what you have to do, you have to take the initial coordinates, which can be experimentally derived. You can take it from X-ray, you can take it from NMR. Then you have to do the energy minimization to release the strain. Then you have to solvate it if you want to, if you are interested in explicit solvent. As I told, that biomolecules are inert in absence of solvent, so that is very, very important. You have to take the solvent, you have to take the you have to solvate your system. Then you have to do the initial velocity assignment. Then you have to do for the heating dynamics. That means when you are starting with the crystal structure, the temperature of the system in crystalline phase is assumed to be 0, so you have to bring it at least to the room temperature or your desired temperature. So you have to perform some heating dynamics. Okay, and then after the heating dynamics, that there must be some equilibration dynamics. That means it will control the temperature and the structure. So after that, you have to see whether my temperature and structure is okay or not. If my temperature is raised but my structure is distorted, you have to redo the things again. Okay, and if you find that okay, my temperature as well as structure both are fine enough, then you move to the production dynamics. So production dynamics means whatever the strain you are, sometimes we have to impose some strain constraints during the simulation. You will find that sometimes energy is bumping. So there are a lot of problems may occur when you are performing some simulation of the biomacromolecules. So what you have to do, you have to at first tune all those. Okay, so sometimes we have to put some constraint, some bonds to constraint. Sometimes we have to make our water molecules fixed, and then sometime our protein molecule fixed, and so on. Okay, so when I am reaching to the production dynamics, that time there should not be any constraint. All the particles, all the molecules in the system should be free to move. Okay, so then this will be giving you the production dynamics. So different type of statistical ensemble we have to use here. That can be NVE, NVT, NPT. Okay, so these are the ensemble, statistical ensemble, which correlates with the open system, isolated system in the thermodynamic system. Okay, and once a production trajectory is done, you have to your trajectory is now ready for the analysis. You can do the calculation and get the macroscopic value properties of the system, whatever you are designing for. Okay, so that is the whole MD flowchart up to your getting the result. Now, when we are doing the simulation, as I told, one of the part is the minimization. That means release of the energy constraint. Okay, so there are several minimization methods are available. Steepest descent method, conjugate gradient method, adapted basis Newton-Raphson method. These are all basically numerical. If you go to the numerical recipe, they are just finding out the lower energy minima. So this is just a function how to get the deal with the minimum function and maximum function. That concept you have to use with the some specific advanced algorithm. Okay, so these are any numerical recipe. If you go through, you can see all these algorithms are available there, and then these are the methods. You have to choose which method you are going to use for your system. And then for temperature scaling, you have to, as I told, that in crystal form, the temperature of the system is assumed to be 0, and then we have to reach to the desired temperature by using some scaling method. So here what will happen, the energy will increase as well as the velocity with the increase of temperature. As we know, the kinetic energy is changing with the temperature, so automatically the energy and the velocity will also increase. But you have to tune your system. You have to see that, okay, when I'm increasing the system's temperature, my structure is not going to be distorted. So that thing you have to keep it in mind. Now, there can be constant pressure simulation and constant temperature simulation. So how to control the pressure during the simulation and how to control the temperature during the simulation. There are several algorithms available. So for the pressure control, you can use the Langevin-Piston method, Anderson-Barostat, Parnell-Rahman, Benson-Barostat. Okay, so these are the pressure control. These algorithms will control the pressure of your system, whatever the pressure you are thinking to insert in your simulation. Then the constant temperature, you can use Langevin, you can use Anderson, you can use Nosy-Hoover. Okay, so these are very popular thermostat which will determine the temperature of your simulation. It will act as a heat bath. Okay, and then various ensemble, sampling of various ensemble. As I told, you can take NVT, NVE, NVT, all these and ensemble, statistical ensemble as there. So ensemble is nothing but a collection of a large number of similar particles. So microcanonical ensemble, you can see where NVE both all are constant. So what type of this is used by simple integration of Newtonian dynamics, Verlet, Leapfrog, velocity Verlet, then Gear, all these algorithms are available for this. And then you can otherwise you can take the canonical ensemble, so where your number of molecules, number of atoms will be constant, volume of the system will be constant, and temperature will be constant, and you are using the thermostat here to make your system temperature constant. Okay, so already how can you do so? I have mentioned. And then you have the constant NPT ensemble also. So you can do NPT ensemble simulation. So isothermal, isobaric ensemble. Okay, so here the volume of the system is going to fluctuate. So this is basically regulated by the several Barostat algorithm, as I mentioned earlier. So next is the solvation method in MD simulation. So fundamental influence, as I already mentioned, the solvent great loads. So sometimes we can use, there are two options there. We can use the explicit solvent and we can use the implicit solvent. So what is explicit solvent? Explicit solvent means water is really present in the system. Here you can see water is really present in the system, and they are interacting with the molecule, macromolecule is present in the system. So interaction potential are real here. Okay. And what implicit solvent does, implicit solvent means we are just creating the environment of a solvent. Okay, so dielectric constant of the media that we are going to control here. So this is, here you can see this is the implicit solvent. So there is no water molecule, but how we are considering water here, that we are just tuning the dielectric constant of the medium. Okay, so if I put the dielectric constant value of water here, so it will be treated as a water environment. So here we are creating the environment, but the real existence of water is not here. So you have to find out that which one is important for you. And obviously for the protein dynamics, you need to take the explicit solvent if you are doing MM. Yeah, sometime for the, if we do some QM calculation, but in the solvent environment, we can use the implicit solvent for that purpose. Okay. Now there are several models, water models are present, that a 3-site, 4-site, 5-site, 6-site, and all these water models are there. So 3-site model is only each atom when get a point charge assigned, and oxygen atoms has its own Lennard-Jones parameters. Okay, so this is very simple. This 3-site model is very simple, and this is very efficient. Okay, so people generally use the 3-site model, but nowadays 4-site models are also used by many of the groups. So here in 4-site model, what we have, that negative charge sits on the dummy atom of A, that oxygen, we know that there is a lone pair in oxygen. So just to model that, some dummy atom is positioned in place of with the oxygen atom, and this improves the electronic distribution around the water molecule. Okay, so this is a 4-site water. Then we have some 5-site and 6-site models also. So in the 5-site model, so negative charges are split and sit on the 2 lone pairs of oxygen atoms. Okay. So this is another model, but thing is that when we are using 5-site or 6-site, the computational cost is very more. And generally for when we are using the additive force field, we used to use the 3-site model and sometimes 4-site model also. Okay, for polarizable force field. Now, what are the most common water models available for the protein dynamics or protein simulation? One can take SPC water model, which was developed by Berenson et al. And then we can take SPCE, that is extended simple point charge model. This is also developed by Berenson. And we can take the three-site model, another that is TIP3P water, known as a transferable intermolecular potential 3-point. So this is by Jorgensen et al. Then 4-point model is TIP4P, another is TIP5P. Okay, so these are also model available. And all the force field, whatever we have shown for the, I have shown for the protein simulation, that is Amber, Gromos, or your CHARM, they are basically compatible with some specific water model. Okay, so when they're developing the water, developing that particular force field, they also develop the water model with that. So with some specific water model they're developing. Okay, so if you are using Gromos, you have to take either SPC or SPCE. If you are taking Amber, it is TIP3P. If it is OPLS, you have to take TIP4P or TIP5P. Okay, I think I have to complete within 15 minutes. I don't know. Okay, anyway, now next is I will go very fast now. Okay, so system setup for simulations. Just an example is shown here. I think I have 15 more minutes, right?
Yes, you have 15 more minutes.
Okay, sure, thanks. Okay, so this is where from you can get the initial structure. You can get it from the protein data bank, or you can get it from the crystallographic database. You can get it from there free of cost. And then first you need to calculate the charge of the biomolecules, whether it is a charged or it is a neutral one. If it is a charged one, you have to use some counter ion. For suitable counter ion, then you have to set up the box length. Okay, so you can use some softwares are there, you can use that, or you can write your own program for that. Then you have to choose the force field. Okay, so which force field you need to use, you have to select it. Then calculate depending upon the density, water density, you have to take the number of water molecules you need to choose, which will be distributed all over the simulation box at a particular temperature. You have to maintain the density, you have to maintain the charge neutrality, which is very, very important. Okay, so and then after that you have to generate some specific file. So some structure file you have to generate this for particular simulation, which will carry on, which will give you the information of all the particular bond, bend, torsion information of the particular system. Okay, because when we are going to the library, because this whatever the Amber or CHARM or whatever the package you are going to use, those force field, they will have the library for the general. Okay, so you have to build up the force field for your own protein or your own system. So suppose for the protein, as amino acids are the building blocks, so for the parameters of all different type amino acid, it will be there. But that is not sequentially. It is just given as a parameter. So now it is the users thing that users have to basically create the specific file for their own system. Okay, so there are some obviously some commands are there. You have to follow that to get that particular structure file for your own system from the library, whatever the force field you are using. Okay, so that you have to generate. Then generally for the essential file for molecular dynamics simulation for the protein systems are PDB, topology, and parameter files. So once your system is set up, you will get the system like this, where the protein is solvated with the water molecules, and these are the counter ions present here. You can see, and you can see a little bit of void space is there around the protein. Why it is? Because when you are solvating the protein in the water or in any solvent, so you have to place some minimum distance between the solvent and the protein molecule. Minimum 2 angstrom distance we used to keep to just avoid the hard contact. Otherwise, during the minimization, energy pump may occur and it may create some problem. Okay, so whatever the solvent molecules are present within the distance of 2 angstrom, we have to delete those. Okay, so that is the reason you can see a little bit of void spaces there around the protein. And when it is minimization is done, you can see now that the protein is now uniformly distributed. The water is now uniformly distributed around the protein molecule. Okay, so this is a very simple snapshot I have shown to you. But when you are using some mixed solvent, there will be much more complete molecules will also be present in your system. Okay, then after that, your next step is that you have to check the system is equilibrated enough or not. You have to plot the you have to see the energy versus the time steps for the minimization. You have to see the potential energy, you have to see the total energy, even you have to see the temperature also of your system. So this is basically the monitoring part. So once everything is okay, you have to see the in equilibration, you have to see the volume of the box, the system's density, the pressure of the system, then the temperature and everything. Okay, so once everything is done, you can forward, you can next go to the next step. You can generate the trajectory of longer many of the microseconds. Then you can go for the analysis of the MD trajectories. Okay, so now for the analysis of MD trajectory, I will just show some of the properties which can be calculated by using your own program. Possibly, mostly the programs you have to, codes we need to write, except some of the codes which are already available within the packages. But if you want to go for the rigorous calculation, we have to develop our own codes. Okay, so some of the aspects I will be discussing here, not to discuss, I will just show very quickly as I have only 10 minutes of time. So these are the work we are basically recently did in our laboratory. So first is the stability of insulin monomer. As I mentioned, that insulin is very, very important protein for us. It is a hormone protein, you know. So that is insulin insulin monomer, stability of insulin in amino acid solution. And another is another enzyme protein. This is chymotrypsin inhibitor 2, how it work in water alcohol solution, its sensitivity in a water alcohol mixed solution. And another little bit result I will be showing you, that is the interaction of SARS-CoV-2, which is now basically related to the ongoing COVID pandemic, you can say. So recently we have done some work on the simulation on the SARS-CoV-2 with hydroxychloroquine. We have found out that how hydroxychloroquine interact with the SARS-CoV-2 by performing the molecular dynamic simulations. Okay, so I won't go to the very details of it, just I will show one by one here. So this slide I'm just escaping, moving from this, because this is just a talk about the protein motion, that we have different type of motion here. So if you just want to know the conformational flexibility of the protein, it is very essential to calculate the root mean square deviation. So root mean square deviation, it is already mostly implemented in all the softwares. Otherwise, you can write your own program. Okay. So this is what it does, that there is a reference position. This is the initial reference position, and this is the instantaneous position. It will see the difference between the reference position and the instantaneous position for all the reference molecule from the time t equal to 0 to time equal to t, and then it will quantify the structural changes in biomolecules. Okay, so if the RMSD value is fluctuating, that means there is a conformational flexibility in your molecule, and even with the computation of RMSD, the stability of the protein, conformational stability of the protein can also be known. Okay, so larger fluctuation means there will be some transition state. I'll show you some of the example. Then we can calculate the radius of gyration also. Here, this is the particular formula for it. And what it provides us, now this radius of gyration, it provides us the compactness, how compact is the protein is. So if it is a compact all over the trajectory, that means the protein is stable enough. But if it is fluctuating a lot, I have shown here one example, you can see how it is fluctuating, this red curve. So that means the protein is not at all stable in the solution. Okay, so these are the metrics how we can designate the protein is stable or not in the solution. And next, just a minute. Okay, next we can calculate some native contact. So native contact is also, this is another signature for the folded stability of the protein. Just a minute, it is taking some time. A lot of data. Okay, so here, what is the native contact? This is a native. It is a contact when the distance between the two alpha carbon atom of the amino acid residues are 6 angstrom apart. Okay, so if this value is steady along the over the simulation time scale, then one can say that the protein is stable enough. And if it is breaking down, that means here you can see the fraction of native contact, it is breaking down, it has the very low value near to 0. That means all the native contact, that intramolecular hydrogen bonds between the protein, those are breaking. Okay, so by calculating the native contact also, we can measure the stability of the protein. Next is the solvent accessible surface area. So solvent accessible surface area means that when the protein is folded, so the available surface area for the solvent molecule will be less, obviously, because it is in a folded state. So when the state is folded, so less part will be available to the exposed to the solvent. Okay, so obviously the solvent accessible surface area will be less. And when your protein is unfolded, that means it has the larger surface area, then you will see that lot of solvent molecule can access that one. Okay, so one can calculate solvent accessible surface area by writing their own program. So we have also used it, we have also computed it, where we have small algorithm was developed and surface area was calculated. Okay, and we can designate that by this also we can see that whether the protein has folded or unfolded or not. So that is also another metric to determine the protein stability. Okay. So now I will show some of the result for insulin monomer. Here, this is the protein. I'm obviously just not going to the details of the protein here, but you can see some helical structure is there. And as I told, that helical structure is very, very important. This is the secondary structural unit of the protein, and they governs the protein biological function here. And these are the all details of the simulation. Lot of we have done not only the classical MD, we have did some replica exchange molecular dynamics simulation also, which is very much, this is one of the sampling method. So to know the protein with the dynamics in beyond the single temperature, we have done actually for the lot of temperature here. So just to know that here our aim goal has been to know that how arginine solution, because we have find out some of the amino acid we have taken out that and we are just want to see that how with the change of concentration, which concentration of arginine can stable the protein. Okay, and we have also used a different temperature range here. So when the higher temperature, what is happening, lower temperature, and all this intermediate temperature, how it is going to change the dynamics, that also we have probed here. Okay, so these are some of the results. I can show you that this is, you can see when the RMSD is not fluctuating enough, you can see the structures are almost same. These are at very different arginine solution concentration was different, and this is the RMSD calculation, as I told already. And here you can see there are a lot of fluctuation in the RMSD, and here I wanted to show you this is the unfolded form of the insulin monomer. This is particularly in water at high temperature, but you can see here when we are using the concentration of 2 molar arginine, it is now making the native folded form intact rather than the other two conformations, other two solutions. Okay, so this is one of the metric we can see that which amino acid, which concentration is capable enough to make the holding native folded form intact. Okay, so these are some of the superimposed structure I have shown. Then you can see here that the wide range of temperature we have studied also 300 to 420 Kelvin, and these are the how the properties are going to change, that has been given here. And then we can also how the helicity is going to change, that can also be calculated, and we have specifically here shown that in 2 molar case how the helicity is also maintained. Okay, so how the helicity of the 2 different chains are maintained, because in insulin we have 2 different chains, chain A and chain B, and we have shown the helicity for those 2 cases here, and that also you can quantify it. These are sometimes, for that we have to use some Stride program that is already inbuilt in some packages, so you can use that. We can also see the free energy landscape. Here we have used for the free energy landscape generation, we have used 2 different coordinates here. One is the probability distribution of the reaction coordinate, which is P of V, and another is the P max, that is the maximum of the distribution, which is given by this expression here. And for our case, the reaction coordinates were chosen as a hydrogen bond number and the root mean square deviation. Okay, so you can see here in the native folded state, this is the how it is lying in the free energy landscape, and how the energy landscape is going to change with the temperature as well as in presence of different concentrated arginine solution. Okay, so I think I am almost done with the time. So these are several other solvent properties around the protein. One can calculate the preferential exclusion phenomena. One can see the solvent structure around the macromolecular system. Okay, so more the structure, that means those are closely packed, and this parameter can be directly correlated with the X-ray diffraction study. Okay, so once you have the X-ray diffraction study result, you can just directly correlate with this result with your simulation derived result also. Okay, then preferential exclusion, as I mentioned, we can the more the value, the more will be the attraction between that particular solvent and the protein molecule. Okay, so this can also tell about the stability of the protein. Then We can do some cluster analysis also. We can designate that cluster analysis means how the solvent molecules are clustered around the protein molecules, and those cluster, how that is interacting with the protein, that we can measure. And also the cluster size can also be measured here. That can be done by writing on your own program, or sometime it is also available in the packages. And beyond that, we can also find out several type of interaction, just like type of interaction, which are very, very essential for the protein stability. Okay, so this can be also calculated with some certain definition we have to put. Then we can calculate the transport properties, the mobilities of the solvent, the diffusion coefficient. Okay, and here actually, if you see the transitional mobility is more for the solvents, then it can be those are more diffuse from the protein surface, and hence there can be the interaction, how the interactions are going to change with the solvent molecules. That can be easily shown by the calculating the translational mobilities. Okay, then here we have shown some of the another result for the where we have used 3 different amino acid. Earlier one was the same one amino acid, different concentration, and here we are using all different type of basic amino acid solution. Okay, I won't go to the depth of it again, so just I'm showing you again. Here we have calculated root mean square deviation, RMSF, to show which protein is more stable, in which solvent the protein is more stable. Here another calculation we have made, that is the configurational entropy, because that is also an very, very important part. Other than RMSD, we can also we know that once the configuration entropy of the system is going to rise, that means the protein is no more stable. Okay, so we have adapted some method, Slitters method, and then we have calculated the configuration and entropy using this expression, and the results are shown here. I'm just not going to details of it. Then we can also calculate that interaction between the solvent and as I told, with the backbone atoms of the solvent and then protein. Okay, then the side chain also, we have just separated backbone atoms and side chain to know the which one is interacting with the protein in a more extent. Okay, then what is the influence of salt bridge, then cation pi interaction among the 3 different solvents. So that also we can calculate, and we have done it. Other than that, how the solvent entropy plays a role for the protein stability, that was also calculated, and it was done by using some thermodynamic parameter model, 2-phase thermodynamic model we have used for this purpose, and all the production trajectory was used for this. And here you can see that how this simple water molecule, those are basically forming chain hydrogen bonds with the surrounded amino acid molecules. Okay, so we have also we can also calculate the low frequency vibrational spectrum to know the nature of how the spectra of the surrounding solvent molecules are going to change. Okay, and also we have made a correlation that there is a good correlation between the diffusion coefficient and entropy of the solvent around the protein to stabilize the protein. And our calculation showed that arginine among all is the best amino acid which can stabilize the protein even at a higher temperature also. Okay, so that is the reason it is used widely in the protein formulation process. Then some of the result of chymotrypsin inhibitor 2 are also shown here. This is not about the stability. This is basically the unfolding study. Here I have a movie to show you. Just I don't have the time. Just let me. Snehangshu, 5 minutes I can take more?
No, actually next speaker is waiting.
It's waiting. Okay, fine, no problem. So I will just I'll just keep all these slides. So actually. Sure, I'm already done. I think I'm 11:30 over. Okay, so these are all the calculation what you can do. Basically, I'm just overlooking all this. I'm just skipping. We can use here is the use of QMMM study. Some part we have considered as a quantum mechanics, some is molecular mechanics. Okay, so these results I won't show, although I have spent a lot of time during the methodology part. At least this one I think I can just show you one of the important result here. I don't know what happened. Okay, let it not be discussed so much here. So this is basically the COVID study, what I was talking about, that SARS-CoV-2 with HCQ solution. Here we have identified the proton transfer is playing the major role here, and I had a movie here also, but for the time constant, I'm not going to show it. So this is all about the analysis of the MD trajectory, what we can do and generate the results. Okay, so this is my team. So most of the results, whatever I have shown in the last few slides, those are made by Dayanidhi and Shantanu. and other students are working in some different field. He is working on lithium-ion battery electrolyte, and someone is he's working on membrane, and they are also working in their carbohydrate field, and he is working on the solvent co-solvent field, and this fellow also worked in some material field. Okay, and also my funding agencies, DST BRNS, and thanks to all of you for your kind attention. Okay, it was a lengthy talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for nice talk and nice lecture, Professor Madhurima. Any doubt? Anybody has any doubt? Please raise your voice or raise your hand. We'll unmute you, and you can talk directly with the esteemed speaker. Anybody? Any participant want to ask question? Any participant want to ask question? Please raise your hand. Okay. So no question. It seems no question. Okay. Thank you, Professor Madhurima Jana. Okay. Once again.
Thank you, Snehanshu. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.